Hi, everyone. I am Andra Annette, and welcome to this session of Healing from the Inside Out. So today I am with Moj Razmi, and she's a transformational coach, holistic transformational coach. She runs a group, the Global She Circle, and she really builds community. So she's also a spiritual catalyst, right? And I love that about her. And she's a speaker, but she helps women who have exceptional women only that have lost their mojo get it back so they can live an abundant and joyful life. And I love what she stands for. We don't know each other that well. We met through her She Circle and she interviewed me, and I just love her. So please help me welcome Moj Razmi. Hello, hello, hello.
Yes, good afternoon, good evening. It's so wonderful to be here, Annette, Andra, and Andra Annette. You got two first names.
Yes, yes, I do. Yes, I do. So tell me a little bit more about you so the audience can get to know you. So I know you are someone who likes to build community because you really spend a lot of time highlighting other people, and that's kind of who I am at my core, and really just bringing ladies together and supporting people. So tell me what got you interested in doing that.
Hmm. Well, I'm very much interested in bringing, let's say, for lack of to kind of encompass everything, awesome people together. So I'm not necessarily building communities around anything and everything, but I've always, as a kid, I was always into sports. So I would bring a community together in that sense. Like I would set up games from sports to some man, like a Moj made games. And I think I kind of got that from my dad. My dad was also gamified everything in our lives. So I was always very interested in bringing people together so that we can have um, a good time together in a sense that we tap into our innate joy, in a sense that we learn from each other, in a sense that we talk about what really matters at soul level for all of us. So if it was as a kid to just be in the joy of being kid, or if it's as an adult, for me to have my group, the Global She Circle, to bring in awesome people like yourself so that I can showcase them so they get to speak their truth more and more. And that's something that inspires me a lot. The more that I be a catalyst for people to come and speak their truth, the more they get to go and do more of that. And also for the other part of the people who are in the group, who are the audience, they get to take advantage of all these gold nuggets that are being dropped. As you know, if you remember from your interview, you gave so much information, so many good mini techniques and many ways to do different things. And your own story was so inspiring that, the other aspect of the group are the people who are come and watch and take benefit of that. So it's like a win-win-win situation for all the people who are engaged. And the group is not just for women. It's she stands for support, harmony, and empowerment. And it's yes, there is a lot of women in the group, but also a few good courageous men are in the group that have also been interviewed and are also members, as they enjoy to watch the interviews and learn.
Well, it's funny you should say that because I invited people to the group, and one of the first people that responded was a nurse that I worked with for years, and he's a man. So
Mm.
I was like, uh-oh, did I do something wrong by inviting him? And then I saw he was just happy to be there. So that's good. I really didn't know what it had stood for. I just thought it was women supporting women, but that makes me feel better that it's all inclusive. So
Yes.
tell me a little bit more about this spiritual aspect, because the catalyst is really what you're doing, but the spiritual sense. So a lot of people don't tap into who they really are, right? Um, they might stifle their voice, right? So they really need people like out there, like you out there, that really let them shine and let them speak their truth, because a lot of people are afraid to tap into that part of themselves. They're scared, right? And unfortunately, that's where they shine their light the best. When you tap into that inner voice, that's when you really start to shine because you are living in the best version of yourself. So
Yeah.
how do you know when a woman has lost her mojo, and how do you help her get it back?
So, basically both of the titles, Transformational Joy Coach and Spiritual Catalyst, they were given to me by my clients over time. At one point, I didn't know what to call myself. I didn't have like, I don't know, I'm just doing this. And it sort of evolved. I have a technical background, and then it evolved that I chose to be a stay-home mom because I wanted to play with my kids. I wanted to play with my own kids. And then from there, within like a matter of months, I started organically teaching yoga. And then that became something big. I started teaching so many different places, and it became a big part of my life. And from the yoga, the coaching evolved because people would ask me for, because I will weave in stories in the practice. So after the practice, people would say, "Can I talk to you? I want to sit down with you." Da, 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 da. So it kind of evolved from there. But so for some time, I didn't know what to call myself until one day a friend says, "Hey, you are a transformational coach," and I'm like, "Okay," because I went through a lot of transformations myself, from a hardcore engineer to a yoga teacher, and then to a coach, to to mom and all that. So that's how that evolved. And then a few years back, I was working with a client on one-on-one basis, and I always made it. I crack a lot of jokes in my practice. I love laughing. I love to be in our sense of joy and all of that. So when I would teach yoga, I taught a lot on campus at Stanford through a program called Be Well program, and I did a lot of classes at Slack. For those of you who are not familiar, Slack is a Stanford linear accelerator, very high tech space within Bay Area, Silicon Valley. So I had a lot of like scientists coming to my classes, and they're all like, my wife to come yoga, or doctor said to come to yoga. So they would come in and they would not even be able to bend very much, but I would put them through with the laughter, with like putting them through poses. But one of the things I always make joke with was that you're going to get more flexible. By the end of the quarter, you're going to be more flexible. However, the fine print is you may get spiritual. So that was like one of my jokes that I would always crack, that you may get in spiritual, and that's a fine print. Because of the conversations during the practice, because of the way the heart opening the practices were, and all of that. So out of that, one of my clients a few years back told me, "Hey, you are a spiritual catalyst because the way that you are, no matter who you work with, you're tapping into that aspect of them. Or whether or not they know they have that connection, they will gain access to that connection by playing with you, by working with you." So that's where that spiritual catalyst name came. And I'm a really cool nerd. So I like the catalyst part because it has that nerdish part to it, and it kind of resonated with me. So yeah, I like to kind of tap into my nerd side at times too. So that's how all that came. And basically the practice of yoga, in West, we think yoga is you put your mat down, you go at the end of your mat and you do these things, you come to the front of your mat, you do these things, you go on your back and do these things, and after an hour you're done. Whereas the practice is way more involved. I mean, I can talk about it for hours and hours and hours, but it's a lot of inside out society, community, different kind of meditation, breathing, and all of that. So it's not just a practice on the mat. It's also you practice on the mat so that you can do all that off the mat. And one of the things I really appreciated about the yoga practice was that you could hear yourself talking as you're doing things. And that was one of the things that I think my people really appreciated, because I would tell them, check what you were thinking, because I would put them in a chaturanga, which is like a push-up pose, but it's like halfway. I will hold them in halfway and they're shaking. And I'm like, what thoughts are coming in your head? That's the thought comes to your head whenever you have to do anything hard or anything that you perceive hard. So is it like, yes, I can do this? Or is it like, oh, F, how many more seconds do I need to be here? So, so those were all like actual life lessons that they were grabbing. And before you know it, they would come back to me and they said, "Oh my God, I had your voice in my head. while this thing was happening with my mother-in-law, what this thing was happening with my boss, while this thing happening in the traffic. And I was able to, keep myself intact. I was able to come from space of love. I was able, whoa, that was like amazing. So they would come back with those stories for me. And then again, that fine print was that, to me, that's part of tapping into your spiritual side and not get hijacked with all the stuff that are happening around us.
But yoga is a mind spirit connection. It has to be, right? So I like how you explained it because I've met with several yoga instructors and none of them have tapped into it and expressed it the way that you have, right? So
Yes.
so I really like, but I like the way that you described it because I think a lot of people can relate to that it's not just about being on the mat. This is the physical practice, but you take what you learn here to use in your day-to-day life because it does teach you how to control your breathing, your minds, and so much more, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
So,
So since we're on that topic, the good practice is to also learn the philosophy behind it, to learn the 8 limbs that go with the yoga. So the physical practice is the third limb of the 8. So there's not just, these things. That's only one of the 8. There's all the other 8 that also needs to come into the practice. If you are calling yourself a yoga teacher, if you're calling yourself a yogi or yogini, it is all that. If you're just wanting to exercise, call it Pilates. It's still perfect. I love Pilates. I taught Pilates.
that's great. Do you still teach? I mean, most of us have gone virtual these days, but do you still teach in person? Do you
So not
practice?
not in person. I pre-pandemic I was teaching, up to 10, 11 classes, different classes. Did yoga. I started with yoga on campus, and I also taught so many other places at a couple companies, a couple 3 companies, at the city, with schools, with the kids, with at home, and all of that. So at one point I was doing a whole lot with yoga. When my kids were in school, all I was doing was that. And right now I am bringing that into my coaching. So using a lot of the philosophy in my coaching, a lot of the teachings that I received, my practice was very alignment based. So I would not just have you move through poses. I would have you in alignment, and you would sweat just holding mountain pose, which is a standing pose. Like you're just standing, on your 2 feet, and you're not doing, supposedly not doing anything, but just by keeping the muscle energy intact, you could be sweating when I was teaching mountain pose. So for me is I bring that into my coaching, and literally I teach mountain pose to some of my clients when they know that they're going to be in situations that they're going to get wavered. They know, as simple as the mother-in-law could be walking in and they're in the kitchen and they get thrown off because something she says, or at work they're going to a meeting and they know that they're going to get criticized, they're going to get any situation, that you're going to be in a conversation that you need, that that you're going to have some legal matters that you need to take care, you come into your mountain pose, and from that space, instead of being a victim, you're more of like, whatever, I'm not going to get favored. Let me just literally hear what you're saying so I can answer that, rather than have all the stories attached to the situation. So I do bring a lot of that into the practice, and I don't even know that I'm doing that, but it just comes when it needs to be there.
Because it's really part of who you are. And it sounds like you really enjoy it. I think I
Yes.
need to learn that mountain pose. It sounds very helpful. See, I've done a lot of I actually taught exercise when I was very young, and but I do my own personal routine, and yoga isn't part of it.
Mm-hmm.
It probably should be. I've
Mm-hmm.
done it a few times, but I'm more the meditative person. But
Yes.
I bring myself to through my own exercises. I mean, I have equipment and stuff like that, but things that I'm always targeting different parts of my body.
Yes.
Um, so I'm always hurting. Like, sometimes people
For you.
hurt 2 days after exercise, I'm always hurting because I'm always using a different part. I
We
don't know
call
why
that
I do that. Um, I feel like that goes with my thyroid more and my body because your body likes that change, even though people say it likes consistency. If you're always using the same muscles, then the rest of the muscles are just not getting used, right? So it doesn't do you any good to have a great upper body and a bad lower body. So I always, I always try to work a lot of it. But I like the meditative aspects and I like the spiritual connection with yoga. And I told someone I was gonna start taking a class, and I after speaking to you, I just might.
Yes, yes, and so that's one of the aspects of the practice that I do with whoever I get to play with, whoever I get to work with, and I do tap into a whole lot of other things as far as energy healing, EFT tapping, super conscious practices, which are somewhat kind of like um, a hypnotic kind of work, and so many other modalities like Reiki. I've done so many over the years. I've always been curious, so I have done so many different modalities, and even like NLP studies, even though sort of rewiring the brain, the neuroplasticity of the brain, the practices that take to do that. So I do at this point, I don't even like, I had a client who beginning of the year came to me to work with me for 6 weeks, and she said she wants to do energy healing with me. And I know this person for 30 years, but she's not even on social media. So she just knows me through some social stuff. And I don't even remember talking about Reiki or anything. And she said she wants to do energy healing. And I was like, I bring that into my practice, but I never like tell people that I do that. It just, if it needs to be, it shows up in there. And so she ended up working with me for 6 weeks, and we had a great time. And the very last session, we did it in person. She walked into my house with a cane, and she walked out of my house without a cane. And that was just by, and again, it's not like I did anything. It was just the energy that came through me, and by me just observing her and hearing clues and really be clear in what I'm seeing, and just telling her, can you do this here, can you do that here, can you move here a little bit? And she was surprised. She walked out of my house without a cane. So there's a whole lot of practices that goes into when we work together, and
Mm,
and just show up when they need to show up.
yeah,
I need
exactly.
a marketing person, so they can put that all together for me.
No, but it's interesting because we have so many modalities available, and I think we've never been in a better time in health because we do have access to all those different modalities, right? Um, as a nurse, I mean, I'm a nurse. We have to know all the other modalities, whether we're working in it or not, but we do have to know those aspects because we do have to do the diet. We do have to make sure they're getting the rehab and no one is declined and all that stuff. So I think it's very important to tap into those other things because the more that you actually educate yourself, and it shows that you've educated yourself, whether it's just because of curiosity or not, the more you're able to help other people and spot things, right? So I study things all the time that have nothing to do with what I do online, right? But it is that curiosity you spoke about. And I
Yes,
think that opens us up to really fully becoming what we're supposed to and how to help others, right? The
yes,
Reiki, the breathing, all of that stuff. That's amazing because people people might, you help them with the abundance and the joy and all that stuff, but different people respond better to different teachings.
mm-hmm.
Like I don't a lot of people love breath work. I'm a nose breather, so it wasn't good for me. I do I do other things to bring me to that same level, but that's what I mean. So that if I didn't have options, I would feel like I was missing something.
Mm-hmm.
But somebody else that I had worked with in the past said, if this doesn't work with you, this would be a better
Mhm,
aspect, something that would help you more for
mhm,
what you're trying to achieve. It it was the tapping. The
mhm,
tapping hit home with me. Um, after I worked with someone who um said to me, you don't always have to go like this. I'll show you different 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 ways, and I'm very into the superconscious, very, very into that. Um,
mhm,
so I totally all in on the balls and wax of what you're talking about here. And I think that when you can tap into that part of yourself and rewire that, like you were talking about with the neuroplasticity, I'm a big fan of Shad Homestetter. He's like the beginning of neuroplasticity. He's like the major scientist who started talking about that, and I follow a lot of his work. I had the privilege of meeting him. So um, I think that by speaking about these things, we allow people to see the possibility of just how we can really change our life by changing those thoughts, and that self belief being the number one tool you could really have.
mhm.
So, what is next for Maj? What would you like to see happen in your world, in your abundance and your joy?
I am not a big long-term planner. I've never been. I am more of a in the moment kind of a personality. And I've learned over time, over years, that I can plan for things and then something comes up and everything is just a wash. So I do plan for things. So, for example, like I have a talk coming up, and sometimes I'm like, oh, I should plan for it. I will eventually plan for it, but I plan for it. And I know when I go into the talk, I will barely use my notes. I would maybe use some of the bullet points because when I show up, I just show up. I plan for my lessons every week. I knew what I'm gonna figure out back then. I will walk into class. I look at the audience. I'm like, plan is out the door. The audience don't need this. They need this. So it's like what is needed there just shows up. So as far as what are the plans for me is I'm having so much fun with my group, the Global She Circle. I'm interviewing people. I think I'm almost to 90 people that I have interviewed since end of January timeframe, and I'm having a whole lot of fun in that group. And I am starting to do some networking event within the group, which I am calling them She Connects, which people who have interviewed and they're like founding members of the group. I call them Pillars of Light, which 11 pillars of light come and we sit and we talk about, there are some questions. So what we're doing here, but in a group format, so that I get to showcase them more, and other people could see if they want to network with them, if they want to collaborate with them, if they want to tap into their expertise, or vice versa. So I'm doing a whole lot of that with that. So I'm sort of moving one step forward with that. As far as personal, I love traveling. I'm going to be traveling for 3 weeks in April with my mom. So I'm looking forward to that. Again, as I've mentioned, I have a couple talks coming up in a couple months, and then the second one is later. So I sort of prep for those things. I am an empty nester. My kids are out of the house, so I don't have to plan for them. So it's like that one is off, and my husband is very self-sufficient, and so it's more of what brings me pure joy, and being of service, and doing my work alongside that, and still do my coaching. And most of my coaching is more of I'm asked to coach rather than I say, hey, I coach, do you want to work with me, kind of a way. So I'm rolling with all of that, and it's not something that a lot of people feel comfortable with, or at peace with, or safe with. But mm, I find out that the more I um, trust, Like I do the background, I do the work, I do the background work. I do get ready. I do plan. I've done enough of the practice that I can be present. So if I'm thrown on a stage, I can actually just do it. I don't need to practice for it as much as anymore, or things like that. But then at the same time, I noticed that I am more of myself. I am more present, and I get to experience more of the moment and be in the beauty of the moment and see the beauty. So I trust all that makes sense.
It does make sense. I don't plan for any of my shows. Most of the shows that I do, I know a little bit about the person, but it's really, for me, it is about building community. I come from a really big community, and I love connecting with other people. So networking, building community, whatever you want to call it. But I feel like you just said, that when I show up as myself, that whatever's going to happen is going to happen, right? We really don't have control over it, because I have plans and nothing happened the way I planned, just like you said, right?
Yes.
But I think the more that you try to control things, the farther away you get from really being your authentic self, and the more that you trust, the
Yeah.
more that things align and resonate. So
Yeah.
I agree with you 100%. I love what you're doing. It was just so great speaking with you and getting to know you better. If you could leave the audience with one golden nugget, something that you've learned in business or personal experience, what would that be?
Well, my work, I call myself also an advocate of joy, and not the joy that is rah rah. This was a fun party. I'm up for that too, but more of an innate joy, more of the joy that you deeply know that you're perfect, you deeply know that you're loved, you deeply know that you're safe. And some people may call it faith, but that innate joy that, okay, all these things are happening, but at core, I know that I'm good, and that innate joy. So one of the things that I've learned at a very young age was that my grandma told me, time can pass. You can be sad right now, or you can be happy. How about 10 years later, 20 years later, you look back and you're like, why was I sad? Because usually 10 years, 10 years, 20 years from now, that problem that you were sad about is a non-issue. And you're like, that was nothing. Why am I sad? And you get more sad because you wasted your time 10 years ago for whatever amount of time. However, if you are in joy, like you're in that innate joy, you still keep your head high, you still having, you have love coming out of you, you're still doing all the good things that you're up to. 10 years from now, 20 years from now, you look back and you say, wow, that was tough times, but I still did all of that in a right way. And I think as a generation zero here, putting myself through engineering school at UC Berkeley, working 5 jobs, I was just like, let me just go through the next day. Let me just go through the next day. Let me just go through the next day. So I learned that, I still worked hard. But it wasn't more of, it was, if I would have thought about, oh my God, what's going to happen in 6 months, I could have not have the capacity to put myself through it. Whereas every day by every day and every day before you know it, I graduated and got a kick-ass job and whatever.
I love that. I love that. So I want to thank you so much for coming in and joining us today here on Healing from the Inside Out. Thank you so much for being a fabulous guest. I love what you're out there doing in the world. Thank you, audience, for having us today, and we will see you soon. Have a great night.